And Don, you can share your screen.
Okay.
And for our audience, I just want to say that Don Salvatore, our host or our speaker tonight, worked at the Museum of Science in Boston for over 35 years as a science educator. And I'm sure many of you have been to the Museum of Science in Boston. It's a spectacular place. And if you haven't been, you should go. But that's pretty good credentials in my book. Don is also co-founder of the Firefly Watch Citizen Science Program or project, and he now lives in Scarborough, Maine. So without further ado, take it away, Don.
Thanks, Caroline. I think I did something when I signed in. My picture's not up there. Did you want to, can you put my picture on there? Or?
No, I don't know why we can't see you. I think maybe your camera's not on or something.
Well, no, I was up there earlier. I don't know if it has anything to do with my screen sharing. But anyways, they'll just have to imagine what I look like from my voice, I guess.
All right, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me to talk. I've been doing Firefly talks like this for a while now, and I really enjoy talking to people about fireflies. Like many people, I grew up
there we go.
There. Okay, thank you. I grew up in New England, in Massachusetts, and as a kid, I saw lots of fireflies. Go out every night and watch them, fascinated by them. But I really didn't know much about fireflies. And when I talk to people doing these programs, I find that most people don't know much about fireflies at all. In fact, I like to think that people know 4 things about fireflies, and only 4 things. They know that they come out at night. They know that they fly, they flash, and people like them, which is kind of amazing when you think about how popular fireflies are. A lot of people really love, I have never talked to anyone who doesn't like fireflies. If they've seen them, they fall in love with them. In fact, people even, it's the only insect I know that people have summer rituals around. I mean, you never hear about people having some ritual around a housefly or pretty much anything else. But I've talked to a number of people who can't wait for the summer. They bring their lawn chairs out in the yard with the kids, and they sit there and wait for the fireflies to appear. So fireflies are really a beloved insect among most people, just about everyone that sees them. And yet, not only we, but in general, very little is known about fireflies. There aren't many people that study fireflies. In fact, up until fairly recently, the only way to learn about fireflies, other than going outside and watching them yourself, was from some children's books. And most children's books, well, they have some good information. Some of them have some not so good information. But other than that, there weren't any adult books on fireflies until 2016 was the first one that I've seen. And this is a book called Silent Sparks. It was written by a woman from Tufts University named Dr. Sarah Lewis, Tufts University in Massachusetts. And it's a natural history of fireflies. It's a wonderful book. If you want to learn more about fireflies, I highly recommend it, Silent Sparks. A year and a half after that, another book came out. This one is called Fireflies, Glowworms, and Lightning Bugs by a woman in Tennessee named Lynn Faust. And this is more of a field guide of fireflies. So it's the only field guide that I know of in existence. So again, a very, very good book to read if you want to learn about fireflies. Now, having grown up in the East Coast, saw a lot of fireflies. If you were to live on the West Coast, you would never see fireflies. They don't have fireflies out there, or at least they don't have the ones that flash. They do have fireflies, but their fireflies come out during the daytime and they don't light up. We have some of the same ones here too, but out there, they've never seen fireflies flying around flashing. So we're very lucky here to have that. So if there are fireflies that don't flash, what makes them a firefly? That's a question that I get asked a lot. So I want to start off the program talking about just what makes a firefly a firefly. And I call this program The Secret Lives of Fireflies, because hopefully after the show, you'll realize that fireflies are so much more than just things that come out at night and flash. There's so much more to them. I find them one of the most fascinating insects, but their life is very secret. And so I put the program together to sort of shed a little bit of light, if you will, on their secret lives. So again, what is a firefly? All right, I've got a clicker here, see if I can get this to work. And the answer is no. And nothing is happening with my screen.
Try clicking on the arrow buttons, maybe, Don?
Yep, so I'm doing that, clicking on return, the arrows.
Try clicking on the screen itself with your cursor.
I can't see the cursor. As a matter of fact, even when I hit escape, nothing happens. Oh, this isn't good.
For everyone who's watching, Don is using a different computer this time because he's on the road, which is hence the technical difficulties. There we go.
Maybe if I click that. Okay, so exactly what is a firefly? Well, first of all, in the basics, it's an insect. Insects, as we all know, have three body parts: a head, a chest, which is called the thorax, and a belly, the abdomen, and 6 legs. And so in the insect group, fireflies are beetles. So we call them flies, fireflies. They're not flies. We call them lightning bugs. They're not bugs. Those are different types of insects. So fireflies are beetles. And what makes a beetle is beetles have chewing mouth parts. Different types of insects have different kinds of mouths. Mosquitoes have piercing, sucking. Butterflies have ones like a straw. Many flies, their mouth is like a sponge, but the beetles, their mouth is a chewing mouth part. And then they have 2 sets of wings. And as you can see in the picture on the right of the screen, the wings that are forward, the sort of filmy ones, those are the inner wings, and that's what they use for flying. The outer set of wings, which the firefly there is holding out behind it, those are called elytra, and they just get them out of the way when they want to fly. So if you look at the firefly on the left, the elytra are covering the abdomen to protect it. So it's a hard wing case. So fireflies are beetles. They have these 2 sets of wings, and the outer wings are hard, and they're held out of the way when they fly. Now within the beetle group, then we have the fireflies. So there's 2 things that will determine that it's a firefly. If you look at the picture on the left, and you look at the thorax, the chest area, it's covered by this shield. You can see it's white on the edges and red and black in the center. That's called a pronotum. Typically, the head of the firefly is pulled underneath that. So when you look at a firefly from above, you don't really see the head unless they purposefully stick it out in front of the shield. The second thing that makes a firefly is all firefly larvae, the young stages of fireflies, can produce light. They all glow. Now, they don't blink, but they just glow. Even the ones that come out during the daytime that don't flash as adults, even their larvae will glow. So as far as we know, all firefly larvae glow. The eggs will glow very faintly. And the pupa, the resting stage in between the larva and the adult, also glow. And so that's what makes a firefly. Now, within the firefly group, there are 3 main groups of fireflies, or in scientific terms, 3 genera. A genus, singular, is a group of living things that are very similar but not exactly the same. The actual organism is the species. So there are 3 genera, or 3 main groups of fireflies that flash. The first one is called Photinus. Now you'll see that these don't have common names, they just have scientific names because no one other than scientists really knows much about them or pays any attention to the names. So Photinus is a small firefly. It's about 1/4 inch to about 1/2 inch long. And sometimes when they're flying around, you see them flash. The flash is pretty bright on a dark night. So you think it must be a lot bigger than that, but really some of them are pretty small. These Photinus, you can see the color on the on the pronotum. It's typical of just about all fireflies, the pink and the black in the center. And then around the elytra, the wings, you have this white border. And when photinus flash, typically they flash a yellowish green color, like sort of like the color of the word photinus there. The second group of fireflies are called Pyractomina. Pyractomina are about the same size, about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. They can be distinguished from the photinus. If you look at the thorax, at the pronotum, you can see it has black edges. And so that would denote that it's a Pyractomina. And most Pyractomina, when they flash this amber color, the color of the letters, sort of a orangish, orangish color. And then the third group is Photurus. Now, in the picture, excuse me, you see that Photurus is about twice the size of the other two. And in real life, that's true as well. Photurus are about 3/4 to 1 inch long. Much longer legs, so they look very leggy. They're much faster flyers. And when Photurus flash, typically they flash this darker green color. Now, the colors per genera are not hard and fast. Some of them will flash different colors, but for the most part, the color of Photinus, light yellowish green, Pyractomina, this amber color, and Photurus, darker green. This is a good firefly habitat. This was my front yard in Massachusetts, and my neighbor's house in the distance. So you can see that we let the bushes grow up and we let the grass grow. And the fireflies like this habitat. During the daytime, they would be on the ground, hidden out of view. But matter of fact, I've never seen them during the daytime. That's how well they're hidden. But as it starts to get dark, as the sun starts to go down, the fireflies start to become active. And the males will crawl up onto the bushes. And then when it gets dark enough, they will start to flash from the bush. And then eventually they take off and start flying. Now the females are still perched, and they're going to stay perched. But the males will start to fly around and flash. Now, this male is flashing about once every 3 seconds. And what he's doing, he's looking for a female. This is their mating time. Adult fireflies don't eat. Pretty much their life at this point is all about mating. They're looking for a female. And they only live about 3 weeks as adults. Some of them are only out for a very short period of time at night, maybe about 20, 30 minutes. Other ones are out later. So they're looking for a female. And the female is watching the males go by. And when she sees one she likes, then what she's going to do is she's going to respond like the one you just saw. So she's watching all the males fly around, and she can be very choosy at this point too, because at the beginning of the season, you could have 50 times more boys than girls. They have a very short lifespan as adults. Their one goal in life is to mate. So they really want to find a female as fast as they can and get down there and mate with her. If another male is flying by and that male is not chosen, he's not the chosen one, but he sees that female flash, he now knows where she is. And he can get down there pretty fast. And if he beats the chosen guy down there, then he will mate, and the chosen one loses out. So as soon as they see a female, they really want to get down there as fast as they can. He'll land someplace close. They'll flash back and forth until he finally walks around and finds her. Excuse me, something in my throat here. Oh, excuse me. Now, there could be 3, 4, 5 different types of fireflies, 5 different species in that meadow at the same time. And the female only wants to mate with one of the same species. So how does she tell from that flash which one is the same species? How does she know what to respond to? And the answer is the flash is their language. Each firefly, each species has its own very distinctive flash. So here's another firefly. Is it coming in anywhere here? Oh, yes. So this one does a double flash. You can see there's a paired flash and then a time space and another flash. And that's his signal. So that's a double flasher. And then she responds to him. Now, some of the ones that we have, the flashes, the 2 flashes are a half a second apart. And The next species could be a second apart, and then the next one 2 seconds apart. And then the time in between is different as well. So there's something different between the 3 species that we have that have these paired flashes. Now, still another firefly might do a flicker. And so that's another different type of flash. Some fireflies will flash early in the evening, some later at night. Some fireflies flash early in the season, some will flash later in the season. Some flash over a meadow, some flash, they like the wetlands, other ones will be on the borders of the woods, some will be in the deep woods, some fireflies will do all of this way up in the treetops. So something about each different flash pattern, where and when it happens, will identify that species of firefly. So that's how she can tell the firefly of her own species when it flies by. Now, the next question is, how does she know which one to choose? If there are 50 times more boys than girls, she can be very choosy, but what is she looking for? Well, a lot of insects, when they mate, the male will give the female a present called a nuptial gift when they're mating. So in some insects, the male will catch another insect, kill it, and then give it to the female to eat while they're mating. Still, other insects will catch an insect, eat it, and regurgitate it and give that to the female when they're eating. But the fireflies, what they give to the female is a massive protein, which will help develop her eggs. That's why the males give the females these nuptial gifts, help her with more protein to develop more eggs and larger, healthier eggs. And what the fireflies do is they pass along this protein mass, not as an insect that they're giving it to her, but a massive protein that's delivered while they deliver the sperm, while they're mating with them. All right, so along with the delivery of the sperm, they give the female this massive protein that they can use to help develop more eggs. And there's something in the flash that tells the female that that male probably has a bigger nuptial gift to give her. It's probably that it's the flash is bigger or brighter, indicating that that male is a little bit larger. Now, she can be very choosy at the beginning of the season, but later in the season, when there were fewer males and they've mated perhaps a number of times, and you can't really tell how big their nuptial gift is by the flash anymore, then the females will pretty much answer to anybody, anyone in the same species, because the more nuptial gifts they can get, the better it is for their egg laying. Now, this picture is a picture of the male firefly. He's upside down. You can see one of his big eyes and the antenna on the left-hand side of the picture, and then see the legs holding onto that blade of grass. That's his thorax. And then the abdomen sticking out to the right. And at the very end of the abdomen, you see 2 segments that are white. And that's how to tell the boy Photinus from the girl. Here's the girl, and notice that she has only 1 segment that's white. So that's the girl Photinus. So if you have them in your hand, you can look at them and tell who's the boy and who's the girl. If they're flying around, if it's flying and flashing, it's most likely a boy. If it's sitting, responding, it's most likely a girl. There are exceptions we'll talk about. Now, if you look at Pyractomina, the one on the left is the boy, 2 full segments that are white, the whole thing lights up. And then on the right-hand side, you see the female. Those last 2 segments have 2 spots on either side on both of the segments, and that's the female. The Photurus is a little bit more difficult to tell the difference. The male is on the left, again, 2 full segments. And if you look at the female on the right, both segments are white, but if you look in the center, you see the brighter white spot, and that's what lights up in the female. So that's one way to tell the boys from the girls for the Photinus, Pyractomina, and Photurus. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, in this story, I'm going to be talking about Photinus and Photurus. And the names are very similar, unfamiliar to most of us, so it gets a little confusing. And this is the way to remember it. Photinus is the tiny one. Photurus is the not tiny one. So Photinus, tiny. Photurus, not tiny. So if everything goes well, the male Photinus flashes as he's flying around. The female sees him. She's interested. She responds. He flies down. They flash back and forth. He finds her, and they mate. So they start off like this, and very soon they switch positions, and this position could last hours. Sometimes they're like that the next day. And it's not that the transfer of the sperm takes a long time. It's that nuptial gift, the protein mass that takes a long time. So typically, once they join, they will then crawl under the leaves and stay hidden while they mate. So if you're ever lucky enough to see one mating, this is what you're going to see. So and then if everything goes well, in a short period of time, she will then, a number of days, she will lay eggs. And the eggs will take about 3 weeks to hatch. And then they hatch into the larva, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And the larva around here will live underground for 2 years. And this is the feeding stage. And then when the larva changes into the pupa stage, as it gets ready to become adult, that again takes another three weeks for the pupa. And then it turns into an adult. And that adult will go underground, will stop doing this, the whole process over again. That's if everything goes well. But there is a problem that can occur. And that problem is the photurus, the not tiny one. When the male photinus is flying around, flashing, he's looking for a girl. She responds to him. He flies down as fast as he can to get there so that he has his chance to mate. But sometimes when he gets down to find that female, he finds that it wasn't a female photinus flashing back at him. Instead, it was a photurus imitating the flash of the photinus. So the photurus can speak not only the photurus's language, but also the photinus's language as well. And so the male is tricked into thinking it's a photinus. He gets down there, gets up close to her. He finds out it's this photurus, and she has no desire to mate with him. What she does is she grabs him and eats him. So you're sitting out there watching all this, and it looks so calm and peaceful, and oh, isn't this magical and wonderful? For the fireflies, this is life and death business. Now remember, as an adult, their one desire in life is to find a mate and mate. So when they see a female, they have two choices. They could fly down and get there as fast as they can before the other males will get there, and he mates with her, and his life is fulfilled. But it could be a female photurus, and he could get eaten. Or he can take his time and investigate. And taking his time, he might lose out to another male that isn't as cautious and gets down there faster than him and mates, and so he's lost his chance to mate. So that's what's going on in the Firefly meadow, which we're sitting there having a great time watching all this. But it does get a little more complicated than this. Now, there aren't many scientists that are out all night long during the summer, along with the mosquitoes, looking at fireflies, studying them. And so some of the things that I'm going to mention now have only been observed once or twice, and I've read papers on them, and that's how we know about them. But it does give you an idea of just how intricate and complicated their life can be. So if you look at this slide, you see on the left-hand side, you have the two photinus. On the top is the male, the bottom is the female. On the right-hand side, you see the two photurus, the top the male, bottom the female. Now we know what's supposed to happen is the male photinus flashes, the female photinus likes him, she responds. The male flies down, they get together, mate, everything works the way it's supposed to. But we also know the male photinus can flash and the female photurus can see the male photinus flash, so she flashes like a female photinus. She imitates the female photinus, fooling the male. He flies down thinking he's found a female photinus. He's found a female photurus pretending to be a female photinus, and he gets eaten. Every once in a while, when the female photurus imitates the female photinus, she does it wrong. She gives a little extra blink. What this does is it tells the male photinus and all the other males in the neighborhood, it's not really a female photinus, it's a female photurus pretending to be a female photinus. And he and all the other males stay away. Sometimes the male photinus sees a female respond, but he's not sure if it's a photinus or photurus, so he gets down there fast, but he doesn't get too close. He gets just close enough, and he gives the bad flash of the female photurus pretending to be a female photinus. Now, what this does is it tells all the other males in the neighborhood it's not really a female photinus that's responding, it's a female photurus pretending to be a female photinus, only doing it wrong. When in fact, it's not that. It's a male photinus pretending to be a female photurus, pretending to be a female photinus. Now, what that does, tells all the other boys in the neighborhood it's a female Photurus and they better stay away. When in fact, it's really a male Photinus pretending to be a female Photurus, pretending to be a female Photinus. Now, what's the male Photurus doing all this time? Well, he's flying around flashing like a male Photurus, but he's having no luck because the female Photurus is already mated. She's no longer interested in mating. She wants to eat now. So what the male Photurus does, he stops flashing like a male Photurus. He starts flashing like a male Photinus. Now the female Photurus sees the male Photurus pretending to be a male Photinus, so she starts to pretend being a female Photinus. Now the male Photurus knows where this female Photurus is because he sees her. So he can get down there and try to mate. Now she has eating on her mind, so he has some convincing to do so that he doesn't get eaten. Instead, he gets to mate with her. But that's just some of what's going on in the Firefly meadow. That's just what scientists have teased out of them so far. So it's really quite a complicated situation going on. Now, one question you might be wondering is, why does a female Photurus eat the male Photinus? Well, obviously for nourishment. The more nourishment she gets, the more protein, more eggs, and so forth. But there's another reason. If you think about fireflies flying around in the meadow, are they easy to see at nighttime? Are they easy to find? And the answer, of course, is yes, because that's what's flashing. They're lit, they're all lit up. You can see them. The only thing you can see in most nights when it's dark. Are they easy to catch? Well, how many of us have gone around as kids catching fireflies? They're very easy to catch, especially compared to other insects. So if they're so easy to find and so easy to catch, why don't they all get eaten by other predators, other insects, birds, toads, bats, frogs? All of these things would love to have a juicy insect for dinner. And the answer is they're poisonous. Their blood is poisonous. And it can be very serious poison for some of these smaller animals. There was a story about a person who had a pet gecko, a small lizard, and he fed that gecko 6 fireflies and it killed them. Not only is the blood poisonous, it's very sticky. When you bother a firefly, they will do something called reflex bleed. That means they force a little drop of white sticky blood out the pores of their legs and their thorax. And so not only is it poisonous, but it can also gum up the mouth parts of an insect or something else trying to eat them. So a lot of things, if they eat a firefly, especially the bigger things like toads and birds and so forth, they get sick on it. It looks like they're throwing up and they just can't wait to get it out of their mouth. They won't eat anything that glows after that. They learn their lesson. So it's thought that the ability to make this, the light originated as a warning sign that these things are poisonous. And so the poison not only protects the adult firefly, it also protects the eggs, the larva, and the pupa. But the female, the Photurus don't make this poison. So the only way they can get it is by eating the Photinus and the Pyractomina. And that way they can assimilate that poison into their body and then they're protected. Now, what about the daytime fireflies? They don't glow. Well, if you look at a daytime firefly, and I'll show you some pictures in a minute, they also have these red or pink markings on their pronotum. And in nature, red or orange is usually a color that means I'm poisonous, don't eat me. Think of a monarch butterfly, nice bright orange. Don't eat them because they're poisonous. Same with ladybugs and so forth. So that's some of what's going on in the firefly meadow. But let's imagine that the fireflies, male and the female, mate and lay eggs. After a short period of time, that egg is going to hatch into a larva. And this is a larva of the Photurus firefly. It's a little head sticking out on the left-hand side. You can see the little knob of a head with one eye you can see there. And then you see the pronotum after that. 3 segments for the thorax and then the abdomen coming off to the right. And underneath that, underneath the abdomen, the last couple of segments is where the light organs are. And the Photinus pretty much will stay underground for 2 years as larva. But the Photurus very often will come above ground and walk around as larva. And sometimes if you go out on a nice, warm, moist night in the fall, when the larvae have hatched from the eggs, or in the spring before they change into a pupa, you can find these photoris walking around on the ground. You see a little tiny light walking around. And so it's kind of fun to go out in the fall as well as the summer nights to look for fireflies. Now these, as I mentioned, the larval fireflies are the stage that does the eating for the fireflies. And these are fierce, fierce predators. They will eat things like snails, slugs, earthworms, depending on the type of firefly. And all they have to do is find a little bit of flesh and bite that flesh and inject a narcotic, which relaxes the animal. And then they can inject a digestive juice and dissolve the flesh, and they'll sop that up. Now here's a diagram, a drawing of a larval firefly on top of a snail getting ready to eat it. And sometimes a number of these larvae will share one snail or one earthworm. So again, they are very fierce predators for their size. I talked about the daytime fireflies. And if you look at this slide, you see three different genera of daytime fireflies. On the left, we have Pyropiga, and the bottom, Elychnia, and then Lucidota. You notice that these don't have any white borders around their edges. So these fireflies are easy to identify by that. And neither the male nor the female glow. So if you were to turn them over, their abdomen would be all dark. But they notice that they do have that pink coloration to show that they are poisonous. Now, the reason why they've evolved coming out during the daytime and losing the ability to flash is this way they don't have to worry about the photoris. The photoris comes out at night, and the photoris is the biggest predator of fireflies. Now, there are some other animals that will eat them. Some spiders will eat them, although many won't. There are some daddy longlegs that will eat them. There's occasionally bats will eat them, but most things don't. But you can, when you look at these fireflies, you can tell they're fireflies and not to be eaten by that pink color. Sometimes you just walk through the woods in the summer, and one of these, the Pyropiga or the Lucidota, will fly out as you disturb them in the bushes along the side, and you see fireflies flying around during the daytime. And you think, boy, that looks like a firefly, but they come out at night. This is during the daytime. Well, it could be one of these daytime fireflies. Elychnia is a little different from these two. They go to great lengths to avoid the photoris because they don't come out during the summer. They come out in the fall after the other fireflies are gone. And then they will find a tree, usually something with very thick crevicey bark, wedge their way into the bark and hibernate for the winter. And they'll spend the winter as adults. Then in this end of the winter, when it warms up, if you have a warm day at about 50 or so, they will come out of the hiding place and walk around the tree and look for other fireflies. They tend to all hang out on the same tree. It's called a colony tree. And I had one of these in my backyard. It was a nice white oak that had thick bark, and year after year, these fireflies would be there. There'd be a couple of dozen that I would see on the tree during the spring, and then again in the fall. So sometimes end of the winter, you see a firefly that's on the side of your building, and you say, that looks like a firefly, but again, it's probably Elychnia, the winter firefly. Now, you also might come across something that looks like, okay, where are we here? Like this. Looks like a firefly. The pronotum looks just right. There's a little bit of the pink color, but this is not a firefly. It's a soldier beetle, but it looks like a firefly. And probably, no one knows if it has poisonous blood. I don't think it's been tested, but probably it gains a lot of protection just by looking like a firefly. Now, we have a number of other groups of fireflies in the US. Altogether in the US, there's probably somewhere about 120 to 170 different species of fireflies. There's such a wide range that we're not 120 to 170, depending on what book you read, because there's still so much that's not known about what's a species here or not. But just to give you an idea, in the US, probably about 30 some odd species of Photinus, about half that of Pyractomina, and nobody really knows Photoris. They all look so much alike. The only way to tell them apart, well, there's two ways. One is the flash, but the flash can be very difficult to tell for reasons I can talk about in a minute. But the other way to tell is the scientists will often look at the male reproductive organs for these, and that helps them identify species. But other than that, there's not much we can do. We look at the flash charts and look at the flash and see if we can match it up. But it's not all that easy. And then there are two other species that flash. Micronaspis occurs in salt marshes along the Florida coast, a very unusual habitat for fireflies. And then Basilonica is one species that lives in the mountains in Arizona. The next group are the glowworms. Now, glowworms are fireflies that the females don't fly. They can't fly, they don't have wings. So they look an awful lot like the larva. If you look at Microphotis, that's a female, that pink one down there on the left-hand side, that's an adult, but no wings. In many of these glowworms, the males don't flash. Some of them do, but some of them don't. But it's the female that will sit there and glow as she's sitting. Now, she's not flashing, but she is glowing. And we think that's what attracts the males as he's flying around, looking down, looking for glowing females. Maybe they also give off pheromones as well. But we don't have any glowworms in New England. So, I don't talk too much about them. Now, if you were to go over to England, they have one species of firefly, and that's a glowworm. If you go into Europe, I know in Switzerland, they have 4 species, and 3 of them are glowworms. But here in the US, not as many, certainly none here in the Northeast. Then we have the daytime fireflies, the ones that use pheromones to attract a female. And we talked about Elychnia, lucidota, and Parapiga. And we probably get 1 species of Elychnia and 2, maybe 3 of the other 2. But there are other ones as well. And I'll just go through those quickly. So the other ones are what you would find in the West Coast, but you also find many of these throughout the United States as well. And as I mentioned, west of the Rockies, for some reason that scientists don't know, really don't get the flashing fireflies. They pretty much seem to be all east of the Rockies. So anywhere west there, probably people have never seen glowing fireflies. So one question I would get asked a lot while I do this program is, where have all the fireflies gone? I used to see them as kids. I haven't seen them in years. What's happened to them? Are they all disappearing? And we sort of know that there are a lot fewer fireflies than there used to be when we were kids, just from a lot of anecdotal, people saying that they used to see a lot more. But when people ask me that, my first question is, do you go out at night and look for them? And very often the answer is no, they don't go out at night. So that could be one reason why you don't see as many fireflies. However, even if you do, there seems to be a lot fewer fireflies. And the reasons we think that fireflies are disappearing, number one is habitat loss. Most firefly species like moist areas because the larvae, where they do all the eating, the worms, snails, and slugs, things that like moisture. Some of them will live in swamps. Some of them live in fields. There are some that like more dry areas, but a lot of these places are disappearing for development. So we're losing a lot of these habitats. In my neighborhood, this is a dead end, a cul-de-sac, and there were 13, 14 houses on there. And I was the only one that had fireflies in my neighborhood because I was the only one that let the grass grow. Second reason is pesticides. And then the third reason is light pollution. So this is what my neighborhood looks like, except for my house, of course. And you can see there's no place here for fireflies. They cut all the bushes down, all the grass. There's no place for fireflies to hide or to get up and flash from. Not only that, but the people really like their lawns, and they don't want grubs getting under the ground, eating the roots, hurting a lot of the lawn. And when you think about fireflies, their larvae are grubs that's underground. They spend 2 years underground feeding. And so a lot of people put up these, put signs, the pesticides, and then they put a sign, caution, pesticide application, keep off. Why? Because poisonous, not just to people and kids, but to insects, including fireflies. But do these pesticides really hurt fireflies? Well, the answer is we don't know for certain because no one has done any experiments on them. But I did find a couple of papers talking about pesticide and how, what their effect is. This one is from the International Sports Turf Institute. And they did a study called Understanding Halophonazide and Imidacloprid. MAC2 and Merit soil insecticides. These are two insecticides that are very common in a lot of household lawn products. And what they found out was that both products are used at low rates, have very little toxicity to non-insect groups, and pose relatively little hazard to the environment. Now, the way I read that, when I see it says very little toxicity to non-insect groups, well, what does that mean for insect groups like fireflies? Probably means it's very toxic and pose relatively little hazard to the environment. Well, to me, if something kills lots of insects, that's a very big hazard to the environment because insects are the basis of many food chains of the other animals that we like. So, that's the way I read that. The next study I found was the Society for Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry. And what that report says, it's called Relative Toxicities of Chemicals to the Earthworm, Yersinia foetida, common earthworm. So what they found was several chemicals considered only moderately or relatively non-toxic to mammals were extremely or very toxic to earthworms. Among these were carbaryl, malathion, cypermethrin, and benomyl, and these are among the top 10 most heavily used pesticides in the home and garden sector, according to the EPA. So these are very serious pesticides to the earthworm, which is the major food of the Photinus fireflies. But the study then went on to say the most surprising results were that the breakdown product, now a breakdown product is a product that the chemicals break down into other chemicals over time. And some of these chemicals break down rather quickly. And so chemical people say, this is not going to last in the environment very long before it breaks down. Well, what this study found was the breakdown products of parathion and so forth were as toxic or more toxic than the parent material, with all of these compounds falling within the extremely toxic and very toxic classifications. So I think it's pretty clear that a lot of these lawn chemicals are having a very serious effect on fireflies. So in 2008, I got together with some firefly scientists, and I'm not a scientist, I'm a science educator, or I was a science educator at the Museum of Science. I take what scientists find and turn that into programs that non-scientists can understand and enjoy. So we started this program called Firefly Watch Citizen Science Project. I ran it at the Museum of Science until 2016 when I retired, and then the museum decided to give it up and we transferred it over to the Massachusetts Audubon Society. And so they're still running the program today. This is a program where we have people around the country sending us data on fireflies in their backyard. So what we ask them to do is to go out into their backyard once a week during firefly season. And here in Maine, that's pretty much June and July. Down south, it could be right now all year round, down in Florida and Louisiana and so forth. But here, pretty much June and July. And we ask them to go out once a week and count the number of fireflies they see in 10 seconds and do that 3 times. Take notes of the weather conditions. Is it raining? Is it windy? What's the temperature? Fireflies pretty much don't fly above 55 degrees, below 55 degrees. At that temperature, from my experience, they'll pretty much sit on the bushes and flash, but they won't fly. Much below 50, they won't even do that. So take that data and record how many different flash patterns you see and send that information into us. In the 8 years when I was running the program, we had over 5,000 people or families participating in the program from 40 different states, pretty much all the states that have these flashing fireflies. And as I mentioned, the Firefly program is still going on strong. So some of the things that we want to learn, and we're still collecting data to learn this, are fireflies disappearing? So if we have a place that counts fireflies in one spot year after year after year, eventually we can look at the data from each consecutive year and see if the numbers are decreasing. And then we can try to find out why. So we can look at it is a dangerous time for the firefly when the firefly females lay their eggs. Is the weather bad then? Is it a temperature during the 2 years they're underground? Is it when they first emerge? If it's wet and rainy, cold, Does that affect them? And so we can start to learn about not only what their population members are doing, but what might be causing some of the these effects. So if you were to go onto the website, do a search for Firefly Watch, you'll come up with Firefly Watch Citizen Science Project, Mass Audubon. If you see Museum of Science, that's just old. They haven't taken that down for whatever reason. That won't get you anywhere. So you click on the Mass Audubon site. And so this shows you where one year, I don't remember when this was, but obviously in the summer, this is where we had people collecting fireflies in 1 month. And I'll show you a little more of that a little bit later. So then you come to the website of the Mass Audubon. And if you look on the left-hand side, Firefly Watch, you'll see a bunch of options, how to participate, submit observations, view and explore data, and so forth. So you can click on one of those. And I do have to say, the last time I went on the Firefly Citizen Science website, they were updating it. So I'm not sure if it's back up and live yet, but certainly, if you go back and keep checking, it should be. But we'd love more people to sign up and help collect data. And just to show you 1 year's sample of data, this is show you by month where people have signed in and counted fireflies. Now in January this year, this is 2012, you see this orange balloon. Someone in Louisiana went out and wanted to count fireflies. If the balloon is orange, that means they didn't see anything. All right. Then the next year, February, nothing. In March, some of them started to appear. Down in Louisiana, we were starting to see fireflies. And then if you look up in Massachusetts, one person saw a firefly in Massachusetts in March. And when I zoomed in on the map, I noticed not only were they from my own home state, they were from my hometown. And I know they didn't see any fireflies flying around flashing. So when you do a citizen science project, you never know, what you're going to get. We encouraged everyone from little kids to senior citizens to everyone in between, people with college degrees, people with, not hardly any, whoever. We would take whoever we get. And then you just take into account data like this. They may have seen a daytime firefly and counted that. We don't really know. But anyways, that's March. April, people start seeing them. May, June, July, August, September, October, and November. And so that was 1 year, 2012. Those are the people that's how many people we had involved in this program. And so then December, nothing. Now, if you were to look at this year's data, what I started to see towards the end of my time, 2016, people were seeing fireflies year round down in Louisiana, Florida, because of, well, obviously because of global warming. The growing season was is getting to be a lot longer, extending into the very depths of winter. And so with that, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about fireflies, and I will end the program here and be happy to take any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you so much, Don. That was, I have a bunch of questions. I don't know about other people. Folks can put questions into the chat. I was a little curious about, this is sort of a silly question maybe, but I was curious what the ethics are of catching fireflies.
Yes.
Because certainly that's something that I think many have done over the years, and maybe that has changed a bit, but what would you say about that?
Well, first of all, I can understand where you want to catch them and put them in a jar and get a close look at them and watch them light up. If you do that, and if you plan to keep them, so many people say, oh yeah, we used to catch them as kids and put them on our bedside table and wake up the next morning and guess what? They're dead. And the reason that they would likely be dead is not because of lack of air. There's plenty of air in a jar for them. It's because they need moisture. So if you want to keep them over an extended period of time, what I suggest is take a piece of paper towel, wet it, and keep it in there with them. However, what I really suggest is if you want to catch them, take a look at them and then let them go. Remember, this is their mating season. And they have a very short period of time to do that. A lot of competition, a lot of danger out there for them. So we try to disturb them now as little as possible. In fact, when we go on our walk next month, I'm going to have a net and I will catch one firefly, put it in a container and show it to people and then let it go. And that's the only firefly we will catch. It may be two of them, depending if there are two different types, but we won't be running around the field catching them. Many times when you're in a field watching them and you think they're off in the bushes, pretty soon they're going to start lighting up right almost under your feet. So I know when a lot of kids go out on these walks, they want to just run around and chase fireflies, but we make everyone stay on the path so that you don't trample on the, by mistake, fireflies that are trying to do their important business of mating and keeping fireflies going. So I don't recommend handling them a lot. And if you do handle them, I recommend you don't put bug spray on your hands. If you do that, wear gloves. Or what I do is I wear gloves if I spray my clothes. I wear gloves when I do that, keep my gloves on if there's a lot of mosquitoes. And if I want to handle one, I take the gloves off and handle it and then put the gloves back on. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about was how the light is produced. And if I could take just a couple of minutes, I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but I can spend all night here answering questions. The light is produced, it's a chemical reaction. So there's a couple of chemicals that are involved. Luciferin is the main one with an enzyme that goes along with it, luciferase. Now, an enzyme is just a chemical that makes a chemical reaction happen a lot faster. And so the luciferin, luciferase work together. Combined with oxygen and a little bit of magnesium, they will combine chemically, and one of the products they give off, the main product, is light. Now, scientists are interested in this luciferin, luciferase because they can do a lot of things with it. Well, example of this is, in order for the light reaction to happen, there also has to be one other molecule, and that's ATP. ATP is a molecule that's in all living cells, and it's the energy molecule. So if you have living cells like bacteria, there's ATP there. If you're trying to produce a liquid that should be sterile, whether it's a medicine or something to, for human ingestion, you want it sterile. You don't want bacteria there. And one way to test to make sure it's sterile is put some luciferin, luciferase in with it. Now, there'll be oxygen there as well. And if there's any bacteria, there will be ATP and it will glow. That liquid will glow. And nowadays, they can even tell how many bacteria are there by how bright the glow is. So that's just one use of this luciferin, luciferase. There are others as well for medical research. And so for a long time, there were companies that would go to places where there were a lot of fireflies and advertise, we will give you, children or adults, a certain amount of money for so many bushels or whatever of fireflies. And hundreds of thousands of fireflies were captured. Their abdomens were cut off and sent to these supply companies, these medical supply companies, for the luciferin and luciferase. So fortunately, today, there are synthetic versions of the luciferin and luciferase. So we don't have to do that. But so that's a good thing, because that really cut down on the population of fireflies in many areas. So anyways, that's a long answer to your question, but there it is.
There are a bunch of questions in the chat. Will the males fly less often if it is raining?
Will the males fly less often if it's raining? My experience, and I haven't been out too much in the rain to look at it, and I haven't looked at the data in quite a while, is they come out in the rain unless it's a really heavy downpour. But probably if it's a heavy downpour, there aren't many people out counting them either. So
where do fireflies lay their eggs, and how many eggs do they lay?
Typically, they'll lay a common place is moss, where it's moist. It'll stay moist for the 3 weeks that it needs to be. And fireflies could, as I said, there's over 120 different species. So there's different amounts for different fireflies. Some lay them all together, and there could be a mass of 300. Some of them lay them individually, far fewer. So I don't have a one specific answer, but somewhere around that.
Let's see, someone wants to know, someone's asking about getting on the wait list for the Firefly Walk. If you click on the Firefly Walk on either BTLT or CREA's events page, it will get you to a form where you can sign up for the wait list. And they want to know what's the best time to go out and watch them in Massachusetts.
The best time is obviously after dark. So I go out at 9 o'clock. They start, and I can see plenty of fireflies. I would stay out till about 9:30 or so. 10 o'clock. Some nights I go out. I've talked to people that are early risers, like they go to work at like 3 in the morning, and they've seen some fireflies. Where I was in Massachusetts, I would see them until about 10 o'clock, and that's because of the species that we had. Now I'm going down to, I'm on my way down to a firefly festival in Pennsylvania where we have the synchronous firefly, where all the males will start to flash together. They flash 6 times in 6 seconds, and then they stop for 6 seconds. And pretty soon they're all flashing together at the same time. It's quite a sight. And they don't start until 10 o'clock, and they'll be out until about midnight. We don't have those in Massachusetts or Maine, but there are fireflies that you can find throughout the night, depending on where you are and what species they happen to have. But for most people, as soon as it starts to get dusk out, you can see activity in many places.
Buck is asking, other than tall grasses, are there particular plants or flowers that support the growth of the firefly population?
I've only had one report of someone seeing fireflies sort of licking residue off of milkweed plants. But other than that, no, because they don't eat, they're not eating the plants, and it just happens to be what plants are around them. I mean, if it's tall grass, they'll stand up in tall grass. If it's bushes, they go up in the bushes. Some fireflies will mate down there, and some will go up into the tops of the trees to do their flashing and mating. Some like wetlands, so that you'll find them around swampy areas. So nothing in particular, just depends on the type of firefly you have, again, and what their preferred habitats are.
Mary Beth is asking, does the weather affect how many fireflies you might see on an evening? And do you have any comments or information about the big firefly event in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park?
The weather does have a big effect on them. The first time I went out this year in June, early June, it was 74 degrees out, and this meadow that I'm following had lots of fireflies. I think there were 3 different species, and there were just plenty of fireflies. The very next night, it was 51 degrees, and none of them were flying. There were a few flashing from the tops of the grass, and that was it. So temperature certainly has a big effect on them. I don't know that the rain, unless it's really hard, I don't think the wind has much effect on them unless it's really blowing. And as far as the down in Elkmont, down in the Great Smokies, they're looking at these synchronous fireflies. What they do is the National Park Service has buses that you get on a list. You have to sign up, and there's a lottery to get a ticket. And almost as soon as the lottery becomes open, thousands of people get on the list, and then it's closed. And they bus you into Elkmont to look at these fireflies. You put down your lawn chair and sit there and wait for the dark. And as I said, they don't come out until around 10 o'clock at night. And then you watch the show, and then you head back. The place that I'm going to is in Pennsylvania. And for a long time, it was thought that these synchronous fireflies weren't anywhere this far north, until finally it was shown, someone mentioned that there were synchronous fireflies. So the researchers wanted to check it out, and they went and they stayed at this bed and breakfast in the Allegheny Mountains, and sure enough, there were fireflies. But the host couple that runs the bed and breakfast were so enthralled by fireflies that they started this festival. So you can see them in other places. You don't have to go to the Great Smoky Mountains to see them. You just has to be down south, and you have to get into the dark woods from 10 o'clock on in order to see them. So a lot of people don't go out that late at night, into the deep woods down south for a number of reasons. So not many people would know that they're in that area.
Don, do we have fireflies that live in the woods in Maine?
Yes, we do. So I've seen a lot at the borders of woods. Yes, and I have seen them in woods as well, in my property, as I would walk through the woods at night and see them. So there are some, but most people will go to a field to see them because it's easier. You can see a lot further and you're not going to trip over things as you walk into the field. So, I recommend if you haven't seen fireflies and just want to experience them, go to a field. And it could be any field. It could be a field that the town has, a park field. You'd be surprised at where you'd find them if you look at nighttime.
And someone's asking, I think you said we don't have synchronized fireflies, synchronized flashing fireflies in New England. Is that right?
2 fireflies that we know of that synchronize regularly. Any group of fireflies, if you have a large number of them, can start blinking at the same time for a short period of time, but they're not considered synchronous because we don't know if they're all trying to flash at the same time or if it just happens that way. I've seen that a lot in my yard where it was nights when I have a lot of fireflies. For a few seconds, it seems like they're all blinking at the same time, and then they go off on doing their own thing at different times again. So they're not what we consider real synchronous fireflies, but you can get a short period of time of synchronousness from many different fireflies if there's enough there.
And Pat is asking, you alluded to this. She asked if light pollution diminishes the number of fireflies, and you said light pollution was an issue.
Light pollution, there have been some studies that show that it is an issue because they're trying to communicate with each other by light. And if they can't see each other, or if the light is diminished, it might be hard for them to find each other. Now, my experience is some light doesn't seem to bother them. Where I count my fireflies now, there's some light shining on it, not real close, but it still lights up the area, so it's not pitch black. One thing that could be happening is you can divide the fireflies into 2 groups, the dusk active ones and the dark active ones, and their eyesight is a little bit different on what they can see. And the light tends to be a little bit different too. The lighter green, the photonists tend to come out when it's still dusk, because the light will show up more against the foliage of the trees if it's lighter, if the color of the flash is a little bit yellowish. The darker green might show up better at nighttime, they think, and the pyractomina, who knows about them with the orange. But there are a bunch of researchers saying that they've done studies that show the light can affect the ability of the males and females to get together.
I think that covers all the questions. I have to say my takeaway is it was fascinating to hear about all the impersonating that's going on out there. And just to clarify, so is it only the females that are eating males, or do the males eat is it photoris eat, do male photoris also eat?
Right. Well, the way we first started finding out that the females eat the other ones is a study was done on the blood of the firefly, and what was shown that the female photoris, when they're newly hatched, don't have these chemicals in their blood. Only after they eat the fireflies do they have these particular chemicals. No one's ever tested the males to see if the males have these chemicals or not, that I know of. And no one has ever seen the males eat the other fireflies. But so much goes on and it's dark out, it's hard to know what's really happening. So the answer is, we don't really know.
There's a lot going on in a firefly meadow.
And if you go out at night and you watch fireflies, it's so confusing. And you wonder how people can figure these things out. Well, they spend nights and nights, hours and hours at night, for years looking at these things. And eventually, the longer you look, which means many nights over many years, you start to see some patterns. I still have so far to go in order to see what's going on, to understand. I've been able to see males and females get together, and I've seen the Photurus imitate the Photinus and attract a male, but there's still so much that I've never seen, and I'm looking constantly too. So it's not easy to see and decipher. So don't get discouraged if you go out and you say, I didn't see half of that. And how do you keep track when they're all flying around? There's hundreds of them there. It's not an easy job, but it is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's what sort of the natural world is all about. It's really about just going out again and again, and you start to notice differences. I just want to say for the folks are welcome to leave. There are a few more questions, and if you need to leave, by all means do. And I'll just throw a few more questions your way, Don.
Sure.
There's lots of thanks from people who love the information, really appreciate it. Buck asks whether fireflies see like other flies do, kaleidoscopic. Do you happen to know that?
I don't know that anyone has ever tested that, but I would say yes, because they do have compound eyes. So I'm sure they would see pretty much the same way.
And in answer to someone who asked, who missed the first couple of minutes, yes, this is being recorded, and I'll send a link to the recording to everyone who is registered. It may take a couple of days, but you will get it eventually. And Avril wants to know how firefly blood is collected.
How it's collected for experimenting with?
I assume so.
Well, I can tell you how I collected it. I picked up one of the Elychnia, the winter fireflies. I must have handled it a little bit too rough, and that little bit of drop of white sticky blood came out. Put it on my finger and put it to my tongue. It's very bitter. So I can see, and it's a cardiac glycoside chemical, which affects the muscles. And so it affects the chemical that I talked about, ATP, that powers the cells. And certainly if it's affecting muscles, heart is a big muscle, has a lot of ATP, and so it causes a lot of heart problems. That little bit I tasted didn't affect me, as far as I know. And I'm assuming that's how a lot of the researchers would test the blood, is they would just give the leg a little pinch, get a little blood coming out, and use that. So that's my guess. I don't know for sure, but that's what I would think.
So aggravate the firefly and
get it mad at you, and all it can do is bleed on you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Don. We really appreciate you sharing your time with us tonight. And thanks everyone who hung in there for all of the questions. This is our last speaker for the summer, and we'll pick back up in September when we have, but it will be in person at the Topsham Public Library, where we'll have live owls. But if you can look for information about that on BTLT's website. So thanks everyone for joining us, and lots of kudos to you, Don, in the chat box.
Well, thank you.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a great evening.